The bridge of the Earth warship Valiant was quiet except for the soft beeping of the computers. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, looking at the stars through the main window. His crew had been in space for 2 weeks now, checking the borders of human territory. It was usually boring work, but someone had to do it. Jake was a tall man with short brown hair and tired eyes. He had been in the Earth Navy for 20 years. He had seen many things in space, both good and bad. But today, something different was happening. Lieutenant Patricia Hayes sat at her station wearing headphones. She was the communications officer, and her job was to listen for any signals or messages. Suddenly, her eyes went wide. She pressed some buttons and listened more carefully. "Captain Morrison, sir," Patricia said, turning around in her chair. "I'm picking up something strange. It's a signal from the Kepler system. It sounds like a distress call." Jake sat up straight. A distress call out here was unusual. This area of space was supposed to be empty. "Can you clean it up? Make it clearer?" Patricia worked on her computer for several minutes. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls. "Yes, sir. But there's something weird. The language isn't human. It's not any language we know." Jake stood up and walked over to her station. Around the bridge, other crew members stopped what they were doing and listened. Everyone knew that finding unknown aliens was a big deal. "Play it," Jake ordered. The speakers came to life. An alien voice filled the room. Nobody could understand the words, but the fear in the voice was clear. Behind the talking, they could hear explosions and screams. Someone was in serious trouble. Dr. Helen Carter looked up from her science station. She was a smart woman who studied alien languages. "Captain, give me a minute. I'm seeing some patterns in the message." Jake waited while Helen worked. He could feel his heart beating faster. Something bad was happening out there. "Got it," Helen finally said. "They're using basic math symbols to help us understand. I can see coordinates. They're telling us where they are. And Captain, there's something else. They're asking for help from what they call the warriors from the Death Planet." The bridge went silent. Everyone knew what that meant. In the galaxy, Earth had a reputation. Most planets were safe and calm. But Earth was different. Earth had terrible storms, deadly animals, and diseases that killed millions. Other aliens called Earth a death world. They thought humans were crazy for living there. And they feared human soldiers. "They're asking for us specifically?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir," Helen confirmed. "Whoever they are, they know about Earth. They know about humans. And they need our help badly." Jake made a decision. "Patricia, send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them we found a distress call from unknown aliens. We're going to investigate. Lieutenant Greg Palmer, I want weapons ready. Shields up. Whatever's happening there, we need to be prepared." Greg was the weapons officer, a young man with red hair and quick hands. "Yes, sir. All weapons are ready. Shields are at maximum." Lisa Grant, the first officer, stepped up next to Jake. She was a veteran soldier with cold eyes and a sharp mind. "Captain, if they're calling specifically for Deathworlders, the danger must be serious." Jake nodded. "I agree. Signal the other ships in our group. The Lincoln, the Endeavor, and the Horizon. Tell them to join us. We go together." Alarms started ringing throughout the ship. Crew members ran to their battle stations. The Valiant's engines powered up, and the huge ship started moving toward the coordinates. The other 3 human ships moved to join them. Jake stood at the front of the bridge looking out at the stars. Somewhere ahead, aliens he had never met were fighting for their lives. They had called for help from Earth's warriors, and humans had a rule, a simple rule that every person learned from childhood. When someone needed help, you helped them. It didn't matter who they were or what they looked like. "All stations report ready, sir," Lisa said. "Good," Jake replied. "Helen, keep working on that translation. I want to know everything about who's calling us and why. Patricia, keep that channel open. If they send more messages, I want to hear them immediately." The Valiant moved through space, getting faster and faster. Behind it, the 3 other ships followed in formation. They were Earth's warships, built strong and tough like the people who made them. Each ship carried hundreds of crew members, all trained and ready to fight. Jake thought about Earth, his home planet. He remembered the stories his grandfather told him about the old days before humans went to space. Back then, humans fought against nature every day. They survived ice ages and plagues. They lived through wars and disasters. Earth made humans tough. It made them stubborn. It made them survivors. And now that toughness was needed again. "Captain, we're getting close to the coordinates," said the navigation officer. We'll arrive in about 30 minutes. Slow down as we approach, Jake ordered. I want sensors on maximum. Look for any ships, any debris, any signs of battle. The crew worked in silence, each person focused on their job. This was what they trained for. This was why they joined the Navy. Not for glory or fame, but to protect people. To help those who couldn't help themselves. Jake walked back to his chair and sat down. He felt the weight of command on his shoulders. Soon they would see what was happening at those coordinates. Soon they would find out who was calling for help. And soon they would have to fight whatever had scared these aliens so badly that they called for the Deathworlders. All crew, this is the captain, Jake said into the ship-wide communication system. We're about to enter a situation we don't fully understand. Unknown aliens are in trouble. They asked for our help. We're going to give it to them. Stay sharp, follow your training, and remember what we stand for. We're humans. We don't leave people behind. Morrison out. The Valiant and her sister ships moved forward through the darkness of space. Whatever waited ahead, they would face it together. Because that was the human way. They survived the death world called Earth. They could survive anything. And they would show the galaxy why you never ignored a distress call when humans were listening. The human fleet came out of faster than light travel at the edge of the Kepler system. What they saw made everyone on the bridge stop and stare. Oh my God, Lisa whispered. Space was filled with debris. Thousands of broken ship pieces floated everywhere, spinning slowly. Some pieces were big enough to see hull markings. Others were just twisted metal. The whole area looked like a graveyard. I'm detecting life signs, Greg said quickly. Multiple ships, all damaged. They're barely alive in there. Jake gripped his chair. Helen, what about that translation? Helen nodded, still looking at her screen. I've got enough now, sir. They call themselves the Varani. They're peaceful traders. 3 days ago, something called the Krell Swarm attacked them. The Varani lost almost all their ships in the first battle. Swarm? You mean lots of enemies? Lisa asked. Thousands, Captain, Helen said. The Varani say the Krell are like a hive mind. They work together perfectly. They learn fast and adapt to any defense. The Varani never had a chance. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. How many survivors? Unknown, sir. But based on what sensors show, maybe several thousand people across different damaged ships. They won't last much longer without help. Captain, new contacts, Greg suddenly announced. Coming in fast from bearing 274. Multiple small ships. Sir, I think the Krell are coming back. Jake's jaw tightened. All ships, combat formation. Patricia, open a channel to our fleet. Channel open, sir. This is Captain Morrison to all ships. We have survivors who need immediate rescue. We also have enemies coming. The Lincoln and Endeavor will start rescue operations. The Valiant and Horizon will protect them. Let's show these aliens why they shouldn't attack when humans are around. Morrison out. The 4 human ships split into 2 groups. The Lincoln and Endeavor headed toward the damaged Varani ships. The Valiant and Horizon moved between the survivors and the incoming threat. Hostiles are close enough to see now, Greg said, putting them on screen. The main window changed to show the enemy. The Krell ships were strange. They looked almost alive, with armor that seemed to grow instead of being built. They moved together like fish in the ocean, perfectly coordinated. Thousands of them. They're not slowing down, Greg said. They're going to attack our rescue ships. Jake's voice was cold and hard. Then we stop them. All weapons prepare to fire. Greg, load the railguns and get the missiles ready. Weapons ready, sir. Lisa, coordinate with the Horizon. I want both ships firing together. Nothing gets past us to hurt those rescue teams. Yes, sir. The Krell ships came closer. Jake gave the order he hated giving. Fire! The Valiant shook as its main railguns fired. Heavy metal rods flew through space at incredible speed. When they hit the Krell ships, the aliens simply exploded. The kinetic energy was massive. Ship after ship vanished in flashes of light. Missiles followed, leaving bright trails as they flew. The Horizon added its weapons to the fight. Space lit up with explosions, but the Krell didn't stop. They didn't run away. They just flowed around the destruction like water and kept coming. Return fire hit the human ships. Strange energy weapons and crystal projectiles hammered into the shields. Shields at 86%, called out Lieutenant Danny Cole from engineering. They're trying to break through our shields by changing their weapon frequencies. Change our shield frequency every 10 seconds, Jake ordered. Don't give them time to figure it out. Greg, focus on the biggest groups. Break their formations apart. The battle became intense. The Valiant and Horizon moved like dancers despite their huge size. The human crews used tactics learned from decades of fighting in space, but the Krell were learning too, adapting to every strategy almost immediately. "Captain, the Lincoln reports they've reached the first Varani ship," Patricia said. "They're starting to evacuate people. They need 23 minutes to get everyone out." Jake's eyes never left the battle display. 23 minutes. They had to hold for 23 minutes against an enemy that seemed endless. "Sir, the Varani commander wants to speak with you," Patricia added. "Put him through. Audio only." A new voice came through the speakers. The computer translated it into English. "Human ship, this is Commander Valen of the Varani trade ship Morning Star. We did not think anyone would answer our call. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming." Jake kept watching the battle as he spoke. "Commander Valen, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth warship Valiant. Hold on tight. We're getting you out, Captain Morrison." The alien's voice shook with emotion. "We sent our call to human space because we heard the stories. Stories of warriors from the Death World, the species that never gives up, that fights impossible battles. We hoped, but we didn't believe anyone would really come." "Believe it, Commander," Jake said. "We don't abandon people. Not ever." Another impact hit the Valiant harder this time. Sparks flew from a console, but Jake's voice stayed calm. "All ships, increase fire. We hold this line until every survivor is safe. Show them what Deathworlders can do." The battle continued. The human ship stood between the Krell and the rescue operation. Every time the Krell tried to get through, human weapons drove them back. The space between the fleets became filled with debris and energy flashes. Minutes passed like hours. The crew worked without stopping, each person doing their job perfectly. Sweat ran down faces. Hands moved quickly across controls. But nobody gave up. "Lincoln reports all survivors from the first ship are aboard," Patricia called out. "Moving to the second ship. Keep fighting," Jake said. "We're not done yet." The Valiant rocked from another hit, but her shields held. Around her, the horizon continued firing, its weapons never stopping. Together, the two human warships created a wall that the Krell couldn't break through. Finally, after what seemed like forever, Patricia spoke again. "Captain, all survivors are aboard the rescue ships. The Lincoln and Endeavor are clear. All ships prepare to withdraw," Jake ordered. "Fighting retreat pattern Alpha. Let's get out of here." The human fleet started to pull back, still firing, and suddenly the Krell stopped chasing. They just stopped and watched as the humans left. "Why did they stop?" Lisa asked. "Because we surprised them," Jake said quietly. "They've been winning every fight. But we hurt them. We made them reconsider." As the Valiant moved away from the battlefield, Jake looked at the tactical display. They had won this fight. They had saved the Varani. But he knew this wasn't over. The Krell would be back. And next time they would be ready for humans. The medical bay of the Valiant was crowded and busy. Dr. Linda Foster moved between beds quickly, her team working hard to treat both human injuries and the rescued Varani aliens. The Varani looked somewhat human, but with long fingers, big eyes, and skin that shimmered with different colors. Captain Jake Morrison walked into the medical bay. His uniform had burn marks from a fire on the bridge during the battle. The fight had lasted 3 hours before the Krell finally left. All 4 human ships were damaged, but they had completed their mission. 743 Varani survivors were now safe on the human ships. "Dr. Foster, how are things?" Jake asked, stopping beside a bed where a young Varani lay unconscious. Linda looked up from her patient. She looked tired. "We have 12 Varani in critical condition, another 30 with serious injuries. They'll survive, but they need special care. Their bodies are similar enough to ours that our medical equipment works, but different enough that I have to improvise some treatments." She paused. "We also have 4 human casualties, 3 minor injuries from battle damage and 1 serious case. Lieutenant Martinez from engineering. Plasma burn. He'll live, but he needs surgery when we get back to Earth." Jake nodded seriously. "Keep me informed about his condition." "And the Varani?" "Physically traumatized but stable." "Mentally?" Linda shook her head. "They watched their entire civilization almost get destroyed in 3 days, Captain. That's not something you get over quickly. I need to speak with their senior officer if possible." Linda pointed to the far end of the bay. "Commander Valen is over there. He refused treatment until all his people were cared for first. Stubborn one. Reminds me of someone else I know." Jake walked over to where the Varani commander sat on a medical bed. He refused to lie down despite being clearly exhausted. Up close, Jake could see that Valen's shimmering skin was marked with scars and burns. His large amber eyes showed deep sadness. "Commander Valen," Jake greeted, holding out his hand. Valen looked at the hand for a moment, then carefully took it, copying the gesture. His fingers were longer than Jake's. "Captain Morrison, I'm alive because of you and your people. My crew is alive because of you. How does one say thank you for that?" "You called for help," we answered. "That's what decent people do." Jake pulled up a chair and sat down. "I need to understand what we're facing. Tell me about the Krell swarm." Valen's expression darkened. His skin shifted to a darker shade. "They came from unexplored space. No warning, no communication, no demands. They just attacked. Our defensive fleet fought bravely, but we are not warriors, Captain. The Varani have known peace for 300 years. We forgot how to fight real wars. How did they beat you so quickly?" "Numbers," Valen said. "Thousands and thousands of ships, each one connected to a group mind. When we destroyed one, 10 more took its place. And they learned from every fight. They adapted to every tactic we tried. Within hours, they mapped our defenses and made them useless." Jake frowned. "But they retreated from us. We killed many of them, but not enough to force a full retreat." "Why did they leave?" "Because you surprised them," Valen said with something like hope in his voice. "The Krell swarm has conquered 17 species that we know of. Each time they adapted within hours and overwhelmed any resistance. But your warriors fought differently. Your weapons, your tactics, your refusal to give up even when outnumbered. You forced them to think again." "They'll come back," Jake said flatly. "Yes," Valen agreed, "with more ships and new strategies. Captain Morrison, I must warn you, by rescuing us, by fighting the Krell, you have drawn their attention. The swarm will now see humanity as a threat. They will come for your worlds." Jake stood up. "Let them come. We didn't survive on a death world by running from threats. If the Krell want to fight, they'll get one. But first we need to get you and your people somewhere safe." "There is nowhere safe from the swarm," Valen said quietly. "They do not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They consume everything. Worlds, civilizations, entire species. We were supposed to be their next meal." "Not while I'm around," Jake replied. "Commander, I'm taking you to Earth. Our government needs to hear your story, and your people need a safe place while we plan our next move." Valen's eyes went wide. "Earth, the death world itself? It's not as scary as the rumors say," Jake said with a small smile. "We have beautiful oceans, tall mountains, and the wildlife only kills you occasionally. You'll be safe there while we figure out what to do about the Krell." "Captain," Lisa's voice came through the communication system. "You're needed on the bridge. Fleet Command has replied, and you need to see this." Jake nodded to Valen. "Rest, Commander. We'll talk more later." He started to leave, then stopped and looked back. "And Valen, you called us Deathworlders, warriors from an impossible planet. But that's not why we came. We came because you needed help. That's what being human means." Jake left the medical bay and walked back to the bridge. He felt the weight of what was coming. The Krell swarm had found humanity. There would be consequences. There would be more battles and hard choices ahead. But as he stepped onto the bridge and saw his crew at their stations, professional and determined despite being tired, he felt confident. Humanity had survived everything Earth could throw at them. They had climbed to the stars through sheer determination. If the Krell wanted a war with Deathworlders, they were going to learn a hard lesson. Humans didn't just survive, they won, and they protected those who needed protection. "All right, everyone," Jake said as he sat in his command chair. "Let's see what Fleet Command has to say. Something tells me our quiet patrol just became something much bigger." The screen turned on, showing Admiral George Hawkins, commander of Earth's Deep Space Fleet. Behind him, Jake could see the busy Federation war room. Everything had changed, and humanity was about to show the galaxy exactly what Deathworlders could do when threatened. 3 days later, the Valiant and her sister ships arrived at the edge of the solar system. Before them, Earth hung in space like a blue and green jewel. It was the home of humanity and the most unlikely paradise in the known galaxy. "Home," Lisa whispered, looking at the screen with love. Helen was watching the Varani refugees. Many had gathered at windows throughout the ship. "Captain, the Varani are experiencing shock. They're overwhelmed by Earth." Jake understood why. To most alien species, a world full of life was a gentle, safe place. But Earth was different. It was a planet of beautiful views built on top of countless dangers. Hurricanes that destroyed cities, Earthquakes that changed continents. Predators that hunted humans until humans hunted them back. Yet it was home and humans loved it. All ships, this is Morrison. Jake spoke to the fleet. Good work out there. When we dock, make sure your crews get proper rest. I think we're going to need it soon. Captain Admiral Hawkins wants to speak with you. Priority level. Patricia reported. Put him on screen. Admiral George Hawkins appeared. His silver hair and lined face showed 4 decades of military service. Behind him, Jake could see dozens of ships in orbit around Earth, more than he had ever seen together at once. Captain Morrison, welcome back. I've reviewed your reports. Excellent work, though you've kicked a hornet's nest. Sir, the Varani needed help. We couldn't just leave them. I'm not criticizing, Jake, I'm stating facts. The moment you fought the Krell swarm, you made humanity a target. Our intelligence has been working non-stop analyzing this threat. Hawkins looked grim. It's bad. We found records of the Krell going back 200 years. 17 confirmed species destroyed, maybe more. They're a spreading plague that consumes everything. Jake felt his stomach tighten. What's our response, sir? That's what we're deciding now. The Federation Council is having an emergency meeting. You'll dock at Orbital Station 3. Commander Velan will testify before the Council about the Krell threat. Your crew will be questioned. And Jake? Hawkins leaned forward. Prepare yourself. Some people want us to withdraw, to hide behind our borders and hope the Krell pass us by. That won't work, Jake said flatly. They know about us now, and if we let them destroy more species without fighting back, we're just waiting for our turn. I agree, but you'll need to help convince the Council. Hawkins out. The screen went dark. Jake sat back, thinking about the weight of what was coming. A debate about whether humanity should fight or hide. Captain, Helen spoke thoughtfully. I've been studying the Varani historical records they shared. It's interesting. They describe a galaxy that's mostly peaceful. Most conflicts are solved through talking and trade. The Krell are something new in their aggression. What's your point, Helen? My point is that most species in the galaxy haven't had to fight for survival like humanity has. They've never developed the military capabilities we take for granted. We're unusual, sir. And right now we might be the galaxy's best hope. Lisa nodded. She's right. The Varani said their defensive fleet was brave but unprepared. They had ships, but those ships weren't designed for real war. Our ships are made to fight because we come from a world that taught us nothing comes easy. Jake stood and walked to the window, looking down at Earth. Somewhere on that beautiful, deadly planet, politicians were about to debate humanity's role in the galaxy, but Jake knew the truth. It wasn't about politics or strategy or safety. It was about who humans were deep inside. Sir, we're being directed to Docking Bay 7. 20 minutes, Patricia reported. Understood. All crew, this is the captain. Well done on this mission. Get some rest, see your families if you can, and wait for further orders. Morrison out. He turned to Lisa. Commander, you have the bridge. I need to prepare for the council meeting. Yes, sir. And Jake? Lisa waited until he looked at her. Give them hell in there. Remind them what we stand for. Jake nodded and headed for his room. The council chamber would be filled with smart, educated people who would see all the logical reasons to avoid this fight. Less risk, save resources, protect human lives. But sometimes logic wasn't enough. Sometimes you had to remember that the strongest nations weren't the ones with the biggest guns or most ships. They were the ones willing to stand up when others fell, to fight when fighting seemed impossible, to say not on my watch and mean it. As the Valiant moved into docking position, Jake looked one last time at Earth, a world that had tried to kill humans with weather, animals, diseases, and disasters. A world they had not only survived but loved deeply. If Earth could create a species tough enough to thrive in its chaos, then the Krell swarm was about to learn something important. Deathworlders didn't back down. They stood up. And when they stood up, the galaxy noticed. The real battle was about to begin. The Federation Council chamber was huge, with a dome ceiling that could show star maps. Representatives from every major human colony sat in rising rows of seats. Their faces were serious as they listened to Commander Velan speak. Jake stood at attention in the observer section. His dress uniform was clean and showed the medals he had earned over 20 years of service. Beside him, several crew members had been called to give technical information and combat reports. Velan stood at the central podium. His shimmering skin shifted through shades of blue and purple as he spoke. The colors showed his emotional state. And so, honored representatives of Earth, I tell you the Krell swarm is unlike any threat your species has known. They do not negotiate. They show no mercy. They exist only to consume and expand. In 3 days, they reduced my civilization from billions to thousands. And they will do the same to humanity if given the chance. Counselor Richard Hayes stood up from his seat. He was a thin man with sharp features. Commander Velen, we appreciate your testimony and the tragedy your people suffered. However, this council must consider the welfare of Earth and her colonies. Captain Morrison's actions, while noble, have drawn attention to humanity. Perhaps the wisest course is to strengthen our borders and avoid further fighting. Many people in the chamber agreed with murmurs. Counselor Maria Santos stood up. She was a veteran of the colony wars. Counselor Hayes, I respect your concerns, but you're saying we should hide and hope the monsters don't notice us. That's not a strategy. That's a slow death sentence. We could negotiate, another counselor suggested. Send diplomats, establish communication, find common ground. Valen's skin flashed deep red. With respect, honored counselor, there is no negotiation with the swarm. 17 species tried. 17 species died. The Krell do not communicate except to identify new targets. Admiral Hawkins stepped forward. Council members, I've reviewed all intelligence we have on the Krell. Commander Velen is correct. This is not an enemy we can reason with or avoid. They are like a force of nature. The only thing that stopped them at Kepler was overwhelming firepower from humans who refused to break. Then we fight a defensive war, Hayes insisted. Protect our space, our worlds. We don't go looking for battles. That's when we lose, Jake said, unable to stay quiet. He stepped forward. The council president nodded for him to continue. Jake walked to the central floor, standing beside Velen. Counselors, I'm a military officer, not a politician. But I know tactics. A defensive war against an enemy like the Krell means waiting for them to choose when and where to hit us. It means letting them adapt to our strategies while we just react. It means watching them consume other species and grow stronger until they're ready to crush us. He pointed to the star map above. But there's another option. We take the fight to them. We find their bases, their supply lines, their command structures. We hit them hard and fast with tactics they've never seen, because they've never fought anyone from a death world. You're talking about offensive war, Hayes said. The cost in lives and resources would be enormous. The cost of doing nothing would be extinction, Jake shot back. Not just for us, but for every species in the galaxy that can't defend itself. The Varani called for help because they heard stories about humans. Stories about the species tough enough to survive on a planet that constantly tries to kill them. Stories about warriors who don't know how to give up. He looked around the chamber, meeting eyes with the council members. Those stories are true. We are from a death world. We grew up fighting gravity stronger than most species can survive. We evolved alongside predators with teeth and claws. We survived ice ages, plagues, and disasters that would have ended any other civilization. We didn't do all that just to hide when someone needs help. Velen spoke up strongly. Captain Morrison speaks truth. When we sent our distress call, we did not expect an answer. We had accepted extinction, but the humans came. They came knowing the odds, knowing the danger, and they stood between us and death. They are Deathworlders, yes, but they are also hope. Admiral Hawkins showed tactical displays with fleet positions and resources. Council, I propose we authorize Operation Guardian Shield. A combined military response with 3 goals. Evacuate any species in the Krell's path. Establish defensive barriers around inhabited systems. And conduct offensive strikes against Krell bases. The cost? Hayes asked, though his tone had changed slightly. High, Hawkins admitted. We'll need to call up reserves, build new ships, and possibly draft more crew members. But I believe we can do this while maintaining adequate defense at home. Counselor Santos stood again. I move that we approve Operation Guardian Shield and authorize Admiral Hawkins to mobilize the fleet. We are humanity. We explored the stars because we refused to be limited by our home world. We don't abandon that spirit now. The debate continued for hours, arguments going back and forth. But Jake could see things changing. The initial fear was giving way to something else. Determination. The same stubborn refusal to surrender that had carried humanity through every crisis in their history. Finally, Council President Martinez called for a vote. All in favor of approving Operation Guardian Shield? The chamber lit up with yes votes. Not everyone voted yes, but most did. The motion passes, Martinez announced. Admiral Hawkins, you are authorized to mobilize Earth's fleet and conduct operations against the Krell swarm. Captain Morrison, your task force will lead the way. You'll handle first contact operations and work with any allied species willing to join the fight. Jake saluted. Understood, sir. We won't let you down. As the council meeting ended, Valen walked up to Jake. His skin now showed shades of hope and gratitude. Captain, I have lived 73 years. I thought I would die watching my species end. Instead, I witnessed something I never imagined. A species choosing to fight not just for themselves but for strangers they never met. That's what being human means, Jake replied simply. We take care of each other. All of us, even the ones who don't look like us. Later, back on the Valiant, Jake gathered his senior staff in the conference room. The ship was already busy with activity as crew members returned, supplies were loaded, and systems were checked. All right, everyone, Jake began. We have our orders. The fleet is mobilizing and we're going hunting. But this won't be like any fight we've had before. The Krell learn and adapt. We need to stay unpredictable, aggressive, and above all, we need to protect the species that can't protect themselves. Lisa pulled up star charts. Intelligence has found 3 possible Krell staging systems. We'll hit them one by one, destroy their forward positions, and force them to pull back. How long until we leave? Helen asked. 72 hours, Jake replied. The Lincoln, Endeavor, and Horizon will form our main group, but we're being joined by 15 more warships, including the new battlecruiser Independence. We'll have the firepower to make a real difference. Greg grinned. The Krell have been bullying peaceful traders. Let's see how they handle a real fight. Jake allowed himself a small smile. That's the spirit. But remember, this will be a long campaign. Weeks, maybe months. Make sure your departments are ready. As his officers left to begin preparations, Jake stayed in the conference room, looking at the star charts. Somewhere out there, the Krell swarm was regrouping, adapting, preparing for the next wave of conquest. But now they faced something new, a species forged in the hardship of a death world, a civilization that learned to thrive in impossible conditions, warriors who understood that sometimes the only way to preserve peace was to be willing to fight for it. The galaxy had called for help, perhaps not knowing their distress signal would reach the one species crazy enough to answer. But humanity had heard the call and they were coming, not as conquerors, not as an empire, but as defenders, as protectors, as the stubborn, impossible species that refused to let evil go unanswered. The Krell swarm had awakened the Deathworlders, and they were about to learn why Earth's children were the most feared warriors in the galaxy, not because they were cruel or savage, but because they simply didn't know how to quit. The fleet would launch in 3 days, and when it did, the galaxy would see what humanity could do when they chose to stand and fight. The massive fleet gathered in orbit around Mars, the red planet serving as the assembly point for humanity's response to the Krell threat. Jake stood on the bridge of the Valiant, watching as ship after ship arrived. Battlecruisers, destroyers, carriers, and support vessels. 15 additional warships had joined his original 4, creating a force that would have seemed impossible just weeks ago. It's beautiful, Patricia said softly, watching the display. I've never seen so many ships together. It's necessary, Jake replied. The weight of command sat heavy on his shoulders. This wasn't just about protecting the Varani anymore. This was about sending a message to the Krell and any other threat in the galaxy. Humanity would not be intimidated. Admiral Hawkins appeared on the main screen, his image broadcast to every ship in the fleet. Commanders and crew of the Guardian fleet, this is Admiral Hawkins. Today marks a turning point in human history. For the first time, we're not fighting for territory or resources. We're fighting for something bigger. We're fighting for the principle that evil should not go unanswered. That when someone calls for help, decent people respond. The Admiral paused, letting his words sink in. The Krell swarm has destroyed 17 civilizations. They've killed billions. They operate without mercy, without negotiation, without anything we would recognize as morality. But they made one critical mistake. They attacked when humans were listening. Jake felt pride swell in his chest as he listened. Your mission is threefold, Hawkins continued. First, you will strike at Krell forward bases in the Sigma Draconis system. Second, you will establish a defensive perimeter around any inhabited worlds in their path. Third, you will send a message that this galaxy is not defenseless, that there are warriors willing to stand against the darkness. Hawkins out. The screen went dark and Jake turned to his crew. You heard the Admiral. Lisa, coordinate with the other ships. I want perfect formation when we jump. Helen, make sure all translation protocols are active. If we encounter other species, I want to communicate clearly. Greg, weapon systems check on all ships. Nothing leaves this assembly point unless it's ready to fight. Yes, sir, they replied in unison. Over the next hour, the fleet organized itself. The Valiant took point position with the Independence, a new battlecruiser twice her size, on the right flank. The Horizon held the left. Behind them, the other ships formed a wall of steel and determination. Jake walked to the viewport and looked at Earth in the distance. That small blue world had created something unique in the galaxy. A species that refused to be victims, a civilization that balanced compassion with strength. People who would travel across the stars to help strangers. Captain, all ships report ready, Lisa announced. Jake returned to his command chair. This was it, the moment that would define not just his career, but possibly humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. Open a channel to the fleet, he ordered. Channel open, sir, Patricia confirmed. This is Captain Jake Morrison to all ships. In a few minutes we jump to Sigma Draconis. We don't know exactly what we'll find there. Intelligence suggests major Krell presence, possibly hundreds of ships. The odds aren't great, he paused. But odds never stopped humans before. We come from a planet that tried to kill us every day. We survived ice ages with primitive tools. We crossed oceans in wooden boats. We went to space in tin cans held together with hope and mathematics, and we thrived. He could feel the attention of thousands of crew members across the fleet focused on his words. The Krell think strength comes from numbers, from hive minds, from overwhelming force. But they're wrong. Real strength comes from standing up when it would be easier to sit down, from helping others even when it costs you something, from saying this is wrong and I will stop it. That's human strength. That's Deathworlder strength, and today the Krell are going to learn what that means. Jake took a breath. All ships prepare for jump. Destination Sigma Draconis. We go together, we fight together, and we win together. Execute jump in 3, 2, 1 mark. Space twisted and bent as 19 human warships activated their faster-than-light drives simultaneously. For a moment that felt like eternity, and no time at all they existed between stars. Then reality snapped back, and the fleet emerged in the Sigma Draconis system. What they found was worse than intelligence predicted. Holy God, Greg whispered. The system was crawling with Krell ships. Not hundreds, thousands. They filled the space around a massive structure that could only be a forward base or shipyard. It was organic looking, like a growth rather than construction, pulsing with sickly light. Tactical analysis, Jake demanded, forcing calm into his voice. Over 3,000 Krell vessels detected, Greg reported, his voice tight. Ranging from small fighters to battleship class. They're organizing around that central structure. Sir, they knew we were coming. Of course they did, Lisa said grimly. They're a hive mind. They share information instantly. The ones we fought at Kepler told the rest about us. Helen worked frantically at her station. Captain, I'm detecting something else. Energy signatures consistent with FTL drives charging. They're preparing to launch an offensive. Sir, based on these readings, their target is the Varani refugee fleet heading to Earth. Jake's blood ran cold. While humanity was here, the Krell planned to strike at defenseless refugees. It was a trap and they'd walked right into it. Recommendations, he asked his command staff. Lisa didn't hesitate. We split the fleet. Half stays here to engage the Krell and destroy that base. Half races back to intercept the attack on the refugees. We'd be fighting on 2 fronts against superior numbers, Greg pointed out. We don't have a choice, Jake said. Patricia, get me Admiral Hawkins now. Emergency priority. While Patricia worked, Jake studied the tactical display. His mind raced through scenarios, calculating odds, considering options. Every choice led to casualties. Every decision meant lives lost. That was the burden of command. Admiral on screen, sir, Patricia announced. Hawkins appeared, taking in the situation at a glance. I see it, Jake. Make your call. Sir, I'm dividing the fleet. Task Force Alpha under my command will engage here and eliminate the Krell base. Task Force Bravo under Commander Lisa Grant will return to intercept the attack on the refugees. We'll coordinate timing to hit them simultaneously, divide their attention. Hawkins was quiet for 3 seconds that felt like 3 years. Approved. I'm dispatching reinforcements to both locations, but they won't arrive for 6 hours. You need to hold until then. We will, sir. Morrison out. Jake stood and turned to Lisa. Take the Horizon, Lincoln, Endeavor, and 7 escort vessels. Get back to Earth space and protect those refugees. Don't worry about fighting fair. Worry about winning. Lisa stood and saluted. Yes, sir. We'll stop them. I know you will. Now go. As Lisa left the bridge to transfer to the horizon, Jake addressed the remaining ships. All vessels, this is Morrison. Task Force Alpha, form attack formation. We're going straight down their throat. That base is the key to their operations in this sector. We destroy it, we cripple them. It won't be easy. It won't be safe. But it's necessary. The fleet reorganized, ships moving with practiced precision. The Independence moved up beside the Valiant, her captain appearing on a secondary screen. Captain Frank Palmer, no relation to Greg, was a veteran of the Centauri campaigns. Captain Morrison, Independence is ready. We'll match your course and speed. Good to have you with us, Frank. Let's make this count. The Krell ships began moving, responding to the human presence. They formed into attack swarms, thousands of vessels coordinating perfectly through their hive mind. Jake felt strangely calm. This was what he'd trained for his entire career. This moment where everything hung in the balance, where the decisions of one person could save lives or end them. All ships weapons free. Target the base structure first, then engage the swarm. Show them what humans do when pushed. Attack! The human fleet surged forward, weapons blazing. Railguns fired. Missiles streaked across space. Energy weapons painted the darkness with lethal light. The Krell swarmed to meet them, and the battle for Sigma Draconis began. In another part of space, Lisa's task force jumped back toward Earth, racing to intercept an enemy fleet targeting innocent refugees. And across the galaxy, other species watched, waited, and wondered if the stories about the Deathworlders were true. They were about to find out.